Okay, hello everybody. Welcome back to the Python camp. We are on day 10 or day 10, the last day of the camp. And yeah, so we've gone through a lot. We've learned a lot of things regarding Python. And on day 9, I gave you guys a project to work on regarding building a quiz. And today we're going to just look at the solutions. It's going to be a little bit more laid back. And yeah, we'll call that the end of the camp. So if you have any questions about anything, about, of course, any of the previous camp days, or even something we're doing this camp, or maybe about even just last camp alone, you can put them in chat and I'll be sure to answer them. With that being said, let's get started. So last camp we were talking about the project was that Bob had wanted to practice quiz, and he wanted us to build him a practice quiz because he had an upcoming real quiz coming up at school, and he wanted us to build it for him. So the requirements were that it should only use 2/3 of a larger bank of questions. After the quiz is complete, the user should receive a grade out of the number of questions, which then get translated into a letter grade. And then also that the order of the questions should be randomized each time there's a new attempt of the quiz. So yeah, hopefully you guys worked on it a bit and hopefully you're able to solve this problem. But anyways, I thought it would be fun if I decided to basically solve this problem in front of you guys. And it also might help clear understandings. But yeah, so I'm gonna work through this. I'm gonna work through this with you guys watching. And yeah, with that being said, let's get started. So if my stream keeps disappearing, I think it just disappeared right now. I think that's my internet connection, not yours. But it looks like it's back up now. So I just erased this. Let's put that back. But yeah, with that being said, let's get started. So I already created my Python file. I just have it here. I need to open it up quickly. Let's open it. It should be on my, actually I think it's already on my desktop. Let me just get it. Get out of full screen here. Bob's quiz, there we go. I should actually edit with IDL. Okay, there we go. So I already have the file here, as you can see. So we have to work within it. So what I'm going to do for now is I'm just going to put this to the side. I'm also going to put this to the side. So this is for writing our code. This is problem. So first off, I already kind of have an idea of how I want to go about doing this. So I think I'm going to put all my questions in a list, and then I'll take out of that list. But first what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make the program a bit more dynamic. So I'm going to create a variable for each question. So let's just say in this case I have 9 questions. Let's just go like that. And also, since there's some random features, I can also import random, I guess. So import random for now. Let's see that. So I'll just call it Q1, and I'll write it like this, and I'll just set it equal to, let's just say it's equal to Q1 like that. I'll do that for each one. So I'm just going to copy and paste this. I'll have 9 questions total. And then all this should be getting translated to 2 and stuff, right? That should be 3. No. 3, 3, 4, 4. Probably could do this a faster way, but I'm just going to do it this way. 7, 8. So it looks like we need one more after this. And the reason I'm doing 9, by the way, is because first of all, it's divisible by 3 because it's saying it should only use 2/3 of a larger bank of questions. So if I did decide to do 8, that would give me a decimal, and you can't really give half of a question, right? So that's why I'm doing 9. So it'll only pull out 6 questions, but there will be 9 that it can take from total. So that'll be 7, 6, 5. Then I'm just going to make one more for question 9. So once again, any questions at all, you can go talk. You can put them in chat, and also if you maybe want to share what you did and how you worked on it, maybe you can like try to put it in like a Google document or a place where you can share code, and I'll check it out and I can show it off. But yeah, this is Q9 like that. Okay, so we have our questions. I just imagine in this string we had questions here, or maybe we had it replaced with inputs. For now, I want to leave it as strings. Anyways, let's move on. So what I automatically know, the first thing I need to do is I want to create the part of the program that will pull out the 2/3 of a larger bank of questions. So what I'm actually just going to do is I'm just going to call this question bank. I'm going to put all our questions in here. So it's going to be Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, Q5, Q6, Q7, Q8, Q9. I said W, okay. Q8, Q9. So that's all our questions within this question bank like that. So with that being said, now I need to make it so that I only pull out 2/3 of this. So I want 6 randomly picked from here. So it can be these 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It can be these 6. It can just be any 6 of it. And then to test out, I'm also just going to have it printed out for me. So the way I think I'm going to do this is with a for loop. And of course, we're also going to have to use random. So first in the for loop, I'll just go like this. I'm going to use the range function. So I'll say for, I'll just say X in range. I'm just saying X because I don't care about that variable too much. And then inside here, I need to say, inside here, I'm doing the length. So now, first of all, it's going to do this 6 times total because what I need to do is grab out 6 questions, right? So I think I'm going to have 2 things actually. I'm going to have, let's see, I'll call this is question bank, and it's going to be called used questions, which is going to be empty. So then what this loop is going to do is that's going to do it 6 times total because we're only pulling out 6. And then, so I could just write 6 here like this. But what's going to happen is that's going to do this 6 times. And for 6 times, it's going to grab a random one of these and put it inside used questions. So hopefully that makes sense. So within this loop, it's going to say, once again, I'm brainstorming, I'm just going along, but it's going to do this 6 times and it's going to pull out one of this each time. So it's going to go through here. It's going to get a random one, pull it out and put it in here. And it's going to do that 6 times total once again. But anyways, yeah, let's try it out. So for X in range, in this range, I could just once again type in 6 since I know that's what I want. But let's try to be a little bit more, let's try to do this a little bit more professionally. Let's make this dynamic in a sense. So instead of just writing 6 here, if the number of questions change, we'd have to update this. But instead of doing that, let's make it so it calculates the number itself. So what I probably want to do is that, first of all, so range, first of all, I can take in just one number, and that's the range it goes in. And that's what number we need to get. So to get that number, I'm going to say it's going to take the length of this, which is 9, and then it's going to divide it by 3 and multiply it by 2, so it can get 2/3. So let's see how I can do that. I think I'm going to go like this. I'm going to create a new variable called pull, and pull is going to pull out those 6 questions. It's going to basically be the number 6. Let me make sure. Yeah, okay, yeah, I think I'm going to do that. So it's going to be, pull is going to be equal to question bank. It's called question bank, yeah. Question bank times 2, or no, divided by 2 times 3. So that's what's pulling out. It's pulling out 6 like that. Or do I want to name that pull, or should I name something else pull? I'll name that pull, okay. So pull is equal to question bank. So it goes in question bank. Or actually it should be length, right? Because question bank is actually just a list. This turns into a string, or sorry, an integer with the length count. So pull is equal to length question bank divided by 2 times 3, which is that the right form? No, divided by 3 times 2, sorry. There we go. So divided by 3 just to get it. So, and then it's going to times it back by 2. So we have 2/3 of it getting pulled out. And yeah, I think it's good. So this is basically saying, in our case, 9 divided by 3 times 2, which is going to give us 6. And that 6 is 2/3 of the total amount, which is 9. So this is more dynamic. And then in here now, I'm going to say pull. So it's going to pull out the range of pull. But something I never talked about is that when we're dividing Python, once we divide, this value turns into a float. And we can't pull a float out of range. And I think we're actually going to see that happen right here. So for now, just as a test, what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to create another variable. I'm going to call it A. Sorry, the stream went off again. I'm going to call the variable A. And yeah, so I just create another variable. I'm going to call it A, and it's going to be equal to 0. And each time this thing runs, I'm going to say A plus 1, and it's going to print A out to us. So A plus 1, I'm going to say print A, like that. So now we'll see if we actually get to run. So what needs to happen is that we should see A print out until it reaches 6. And that's how we know our loop is actually running 6 times. And that reflects this list over here and all this other code we've written. So let's save this and let's run it. And yeah, so we get that float error that I was talking about, because once we divide, even if we divide it all, and that's a whole number, so we'd say 9 divided by 3, that's going to give us 3.0. So it's seen as a float. So simply what I'm just going to do here is that I'm going to, I think I'm just going to call this an int inside here, and that'll fix it. So get rid of that decimal at the end like that. So we save it and we run it again, and yeah, it works. So we see this ran 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and we can check that because I just made a simple code here when we see that. I don't actually need this. This was just to make sure our for loop was working. But yeah, let's get back to writing code. So we have our loop, and now we need this loop to start pulling out random things from inside here. So now we've just created a part that lets our loop run a certain amount of times. So we need to put things inside use. Let's see. To do that, we're going to use random. So let's think. How should I go about doing this? So honestly, I might just say used questions dot append, and then this. So remember, dot append is to just add on, basically to add on top of it, or sorry, to add to the list. It's a list method. And now in here, I think is where all my code goes. So 6 times it's going to go in here and add something random each time, right? So I can say, let me think. I can say it's going to get, so I'm going to say random dot random. I'll break this down if this works afterwards. No, I should go like this. Okay, so I'm going to say question bank, and I'm going to put this here, and I'm going to say, what do I think? Random dot, I'll put this full screen now since we already know our criteria. So random dot randint, and then the range of this now, I think it's going to be, so we're getting a range from here. It's going to be 0 to length of questions bank. Let me make sure I'm even doing this right. So to used questions, this should be user questions. So to used questions, what we're pulling out, so I'm just saying append. So it's going to append from questions bank, and then inside these brackets now, that means we're calling a number from questions bank. And then we're saying random.randit 0 and length of questions bank. So it's going to pull out a random number from questions bank, which I think should work. Let's make sure. So I'll space this out just so we can see what's actually going on here properly. So we're appending, first of all, that's our function. And then these brackets represent what's being appended. We're part of that list method. And now we're saying questions bank, and then we put that square bracket, which means we're calling on a number. So if we said 0, that would mean we're appending question 1. If we said 2, it means we're calling on question 3, because that's just how Python counts. So then here now, instead of just putting an exact number, I'm going to make it get that number randomized. So I'm saying random.randit, and then I'm giving it where it's pulling that number out of. So it's pulling it out of first 0, because that's always going to be 0. And then now I'm going to say length of questions bank, because length of question bank, remember what's called it represents how many questions there actually are inside it. And then after that, I'm going to type -1, because it counts it normally with length. So it's actually going to say there are 9 things within inside bank when they're actually 8, technically, if Python counts it. But yeah, so -1 like that. Move the spaces I put here. And let's see if this works. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get it to, outside of this, print out. It's going to print out used questions, so you can see if it actually is able to pull out the questions we used. This looks like a lot. We could probably change this to something else. But yeah, so I'm just going to call this user. We could probably put this in a variable even, but I'll just leave it like this for now. So save this. Let's run it. So list has no object. Append. Oh, okay, I said that wrong. Let me make sure my spelling's incorrect. I believe. Let me make sure. Okay, yeah, my spelling is wrong. Let's see. List.append like that. Okay, there we go. So I think I had a spelling mistake. Questions bank is not defined. So I also probably have another spelling mistake there. Let me see what line that's on. Line 21. I think that's this line. Questions bank. Oh yeah, okay. So I put questions. It should be question bank. There we go. That should also just be question bank. And I think that's good. So I just had a couple of spelling mistakes, but let's run it now. And this is what it pulls out. It pulls out question 5, question 2, question 3, question 1, question 4, and then question 3 again. So it looks like we ran into a problem. So first of all, it's good because it pulls out questions now. At least it pulls out random ones. But our problem is that, as you can see here, it pulled out a duplicate one. So it pulled out question 3 twice now. So we need to fix that. And I think we can honestly just fix that with a if statement. So let's see. How do I want to go about doing this? Well, first, let me even think if there's another way. If I can go about pulling out questions without having to do all of that work. So let's see. I can create another list even. I can create another list called not pulled. And then I can go into that list and I can make it so that all the questions that have already been used don't go there. So it's just gonna add a little bit more work, but I'm thinking that this might be the simplest way we can go about doing it without having to switch from lists or maybe using a function we haven't discussed in this camp yet. So let's see, not pulled. So what I'm gonna do is this, I think. Let me just even take a second to think. Also, yeah, I guess this is a good extra. So you guys can also try thinking it with me. So the problem is that it pulled out a duplicate question, right? Because when we print and use questions, it pulled out question 3 twice. And we can imagine if question 3 was something like, what color is an apple? That means they get the question twice. So we want unique questions each time. How can we go about to make this happen? Let me think. If you have ideas as well, you can also put them in chat and I'll try using them. But yeah, we want unique questions for each thing we pull out. This is our question bank. And when we're putting in used questions, we want to make sure it's always unique. So let me think. To do this, we could create a for loop. And inside that for loop, okay. So what I'm thinking is that I think .find will allow us to check to see if something exists. And if it exists more than once, if we say .find is greater than 0, because .find will show us how many times something appears. If we say it's greater than 0, then we're going to remove it. Or we can create something called not pulled, and we can keep removing stuff from the list like that. Let me think. Which one would we like to do instead? I'm thinking there's a way that we can probably just edit this, like basically I call it function, like a way we can edit this code we made so it would pull out something unique each time. So let's see. So from used questions, for in this range of 6, it's going to pull out something from used questions each time. So honestly, let's try and see if we can make an if statement to solve this. I'm going to say if, maybe I can do it even before that. I'm going to say if, no, I'll do that. I think I have to do it after. So if used questions dot if used questions, I'm trying to do this in a way because I was going to use a function we haven't discussed, but let's go do it like this. Hold on, let me just think of this properly. I'm trying to think of a way we can do this. So not pulled question bank. I need a unique question each time. Let's say, let's go. Okay, I'm gonna try doing it like this. So first of all, I'll make sure my code's all correct so far. So it's going to pull out 6 total. That's done. And now we're saying it's going to add question bank random 0 to this. So we can make it maybe so that this, okay, yeah, let's try putting this in the if statement. So I'm going to say if I'll put this in a variable actually. So let me put this in a variable. I'm going to say, what I'm thinking is this. I'm saying if this variable is in used questions, we're going to create a for loop that checks each one in used questions, then it's going to cancel out the whole thing completely. Let me see if that even makes sense, if I explain that properly. If pull, so if the pull is going to be that, I'm saying if used questions. So we're adding it to used questions, right? We're doing used questions dot append. So let me see quickly, make sure if this would work. Otherwise, I might try doing this a whole different way with the list, just so we can avoid having to make this a lot more complicated, because I want to keep this a bit simple. So for anybody, if anybody just joined, our problem, just to even re-explain the problem. So right now I'm building from scratch, and our problem is that our question bank is pulling out something unique each time. So, or it's not pulling out something unique each time for the questions, it's pulling out from here. So when it's getting a random one, it's getting anything that it wants to be random. So the way I can avoid doing this is if I kind of change up the way I'm even formatting this, or if I change like the method I'm going to use to create this quiz. But I'm trying to see if there's a simple way we can go about doing this. So we want to make it unique each time. So let's save it and let's run it. Okay, I have something random here. Let me remove that. Let's save and then let's run F5. So yeah, in this example, we got question 4 twice, which we don't want. So I'm trying to think of the code we need to use to make it so that we would say that if question 4 is in a list already. So honestly, let's make something that checks the list first. So I'm going to create a for loop that goes through the list and it checks everything first of all. So for x in, I'll call it I, for I in range, let's just copy int pull, yeah. And pull, pretty much what I'm going to make this for loop do is I'm going to make it go inside and it's going to check each variable. And I'll say, how should it save it? First, I'll say a equals 0 up here. I'm not even writing within the for loop. My bad. There we go. For an I in range int pull, what I want to say is that it's going to save a equals, let's say, a equals int. Okay, here I have to do a couple things before I can even do that. First, I'm going to say a equals 0 here. Then I'm going to say, I'll call this b for now, and I'll say b equals what's called what are we checking? Used questions. Used questions, and then let's set that to a, and then we're going to say a plus 1 here as well, I think. 1. So this is going to get a little bit more complicated, but I'm going to break this first, and I'm going to explain what I'm doing afterwards. So first of all, just as a basic, what I'm even doing is I'm making it so it checks each thing within the list. So it's going to check each item in the list. It's going to like save it as a variable. So maybe I can even do this inside the original one now that I think about it. So maybe what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if I have to make some more variables to this, I'm going to say if b, the variable I create to represent you questions, is equal to if anything inside the list is equal to, let me think, how should I do this? I might change up the whole format. Okay, maybe we won't do this way. Let's go like this. I'm just trying to brainstorm a solution. Honestly, for now, let's continue on, and I think we'll fix this at the end. Let's continue on. I'll fix this at the end of the program. Yeah, I think that's the best thing I can do, because that one I can change at any time since it's just pulling out the question. So for now, we'll leave this function like this. Let's just remember that right now, currently, it's not pulling out unique questions all the time. And since this is so random, it's to the point where it might accidentally pull out the wrong thing. But I can imagine we're going to need to use an if statement here. But I just need to think about that a bit longer as we write the rest of the program. So anyways, we've written most of this now. So we can actually, all this thing I wrote here, like the question 1, the question 2, the question 3, we can replace that with actual proper questions if we wanted. But for now, I'm just going to leave it like this for a bit longer. We can place that at the end. And also, we don't need to print used questions anymore. Instead, what needs to happen now is that now I want to actually display the questions. So first, let's start off with like a basic prompt. So I'll just call this prompt 1. And I'll say it's going to be equal to input, and I'll ask, would you like to attempt the quiz? Would you like to attempt the quiz? Like that. Then pretty much from there, I can just say, I'll just call this something more simple. I'll call this intro. And then from there now, I'm going to say if intro equals, I have to put 2, if intro equals y, or intro equals yes, it's going to start the quiz. So to start the quiz, it's going to be question 1 first, and it's going to pull out in a random order. Because if we look back here, it says the order of the questions to be randomized each time there's a new attempt at the quiz. This attempt, we'll just say, starts after the user says yes to wanting to attempt the quiz. So from here now, pretty much we have our used questions bank, which would be created, and we're actually just literally pulling out something random from it each time. So I guess this is the easy part. So I'll say print. Actually, I'll just ask the question first. We don't need to put any question 1 or question 2 thing. So I'll say, let me see. If they say yes, let me think about how I'm trying to think about how I want to do this. If they say yes, I will say, would you like to attempt the quiz? Yes. Then I'm going to print question 1, right? I'm going to print out all of them. Oh, yeah, I need to randomize it. I forgot. Okay, there we go. That's what I was trying to do. So now we're messing with used questions since that pulled out the 6 we wanted. So used questions. And then now we want to get something random out of it. So I'll just say random rand int. Let's say, no, random.rand int doesn't use square brackets. It uses ones like this. So I'll say random.randint, and then we have to give it a range. So I'll say 0, and it's going from length, and it's going to be length of what? Length of used questions. So now this makes it so that it's going to first just start off. Maybe I'll even say print. I have to say print all of this, right? So print used questions. So it's going to print something out of used questions first of all. It's going to print one of these because I put the square brackets and I said random.randit, and it's going to be, of course, from random in the range of used questions, right? So now it's just getting something random out of used questions. But as I was doing that, I think I might have thought of a solution for our first original problem about pulling out maybe the same thing possibly. And that is putting this random.randit thing within a variable. So let's try that. So I'm just going to call this variable a. I'm going to say a is equal to this thing down here. Let's see, I think I have to put it this far. Random.randint 0, length of range, used questions. And I'll say if a is equal to, okay, yeah, this might work. I think I thought of a solution. So yeah, it's going to print out one of the random questions. Let's just say now, instead of saying this, we can just say A. So let's go like that, and then let's close that off, and let's say A like that. Since we already have this existing, I might put this higher. No, I'll leave it here for now. So we have A like that, and then we say print used questions, that's going to print out A from it, and A is, remember, equal to that random thing from it. And then from there now, what needs to happen is, actually, let's test it out. Let's test out what we have. So would you like to attempt the quiz? I say yes. And then imagine this was a question. And then we can also imagine that we just replace this to input and we could ask a question there. So to go any further, actually, we actually do need to replace this with inputs now. So I'm going to call this inputs. And now instead of that, I'm going to type in here Q1, Q2, and Q3 again. So let's do that. Because we actually do need to take in an input now for it to actually have a value. So let me just do that. Sorry for this time. That's good. And I'll replace all of this now. So Q1's good. Q2, Q3, Q4, Q5, Q6, Q7, Q8, Q9. Done. So yeah, it's going to, what's called, at this point, since we turned it into inputs now, we no longer need to say, we just need to simply get this input to run. So what I might do is that down here again, let me think, actually, how should we do this? If these are assigned inputs and I don't want it to show yet, I'll make it so like this. Okay, so I'm going to copy and paste all this. I'm going to put it near down here. And I'm going to, or actually I need to copy and paste it. I'm going to put this back to the original one like this, since we need these values still. Because remember, that's what the bank exists of. So if this doesn't exist and the bank doesn't exist, then anyways, down here, if they say they'd like to attempt the quiz, since used questions already exist now and it's assigned whatever this thing is, we're going to go like this. I think I'm going to go down here. I'm going to go like that. So then now we're just simply updating the values of all these variables again with inputs. And the reason I have these needed to exist up here is because we have the question banks. We need the question bank so we can even create this whole function of pull. So don't be wondering, there is another way to do this without even having to like use all these lists to hold the questions. We can simply make it so that we just have the questions existing in variables, and then we just we just get all of them randomly put out. But let's try to do it the more complicated way, just so we can have a dynamic program. And in the end, it might be worth it. And if this fails, if I fail this, I'm just going to quickly do it at the end, the more simpler way. But anyways, let's read what we have so far, just so I can catch up and remember everything. So from question bank, we have all these variables in it, and then we have not pulled. So what I'm thinking actually is that in here, I might replace this all with strings, because it doesn't make sense to have variables having it exist twice. And then we also have not pulled. Not pulled actually doesn't need to exist at all. Let me remove that. And we have pull, which is equal to that function of pulling out 6 from there. So let's do that for now. So first of all, this is no longer going to be variables. This is just going to be Q1, Q2, Q3. Actually, no, it should be variables. Yeah, I think it should be variables. So this is the variables. We have that, then used questions. Then we're going to say for x range. It's going to basically put what's called. It's going to put a bunch of random stuff in used questions, random questions that are taken from here. And then in used questions now, what we're simply just trying to do is get those questions to display. Okay, and yeah, I was doing this the wrong way. We don't need input up here. We can just create inputs for each one. So we send use questions A, and then we can create a new input now. And I can say A equals, or I can create a new variable that's simply just going to be the input. So that's what I should have done. So input, and then I'll call this, what should I call these variables? I'll call these variables question1 response 1. and it's going to be equal to input, and then I'll tell it to be equaled. Actually, should I just leave it like that? Print used questions. And yeah, okay. So I think this is good. Print used question is going to print out question A, and it's going to print out response like that. And A, by the way, is just equal to that function we created up here, which is the random thing. So let's save that and run it just to test our work. Would you like to attempt the quiz? I say yes. It prints out whatever question, and then down here, imagine we respond. So imagine this was a question up here. So now what we need to do is that we need to make it so we have a loop inside this entire if statement so that it asks each question after each one, right? So let's close this now, and let's put this in a loop. So yeah, let's do that right now. So I'm gonna say for let's just say A in, I'll use a different name, for Z in range. I'm just gonna simply do the same one we had up here, which was pull. And but any questions about any code I've written, you can put them in chat and I'll be sure to answer them. Anyways, let me just do this one. So int pull, like that. So for Z in range of int pull, remember, is just equal to that function where it has 6. And maybe, yeah, so int is equal to that function where it's just basically saying 6. So it's taking it from question bank and dividing it to get 2/3 of it. Then we're going to have this inside it like that. That can be tabbed, or that can be needed colon. And then we're going to say if intro equals yes or yes, it's going to print response A, question 1. And let's get this so this updates each time as well. So maybe for now, I'm just going to tell it it's going to be A, and A is not going to be equal to this anymore. I'm going to say A equals 0. And then here, I'll explain this after. Let me just write this. A equals 1 like that. And I say if is not equal to, and break. Okay, so I've just written some code and I'm going to explain it now. So pretty much what I've done now is I've turned it so that A is equal to 0. And if you remember where A is being used down here, or sorry, A was being used in pulling this used question thing. So now since A is equal to 0, it's going to print used questions 0. So it's going to print out the first question, which is whatever. And then after that, it's going to add 1 to it for the next time we run it. And then it's going to check to see if A is equal to, if A is past like the amount of questions we have. And if it is, it's going to break. And then else, it's going to then give them the option to input something. So hopefully that makes a bit of sense. So let's test this out in a second, just make sure this is readable. So what we should see on our screen is Q1, and then we should be able to respond. So indented block. Oh yeah, this needs to be indented in like that. So let me make sure if intro is equal to yes. Okay, let's space that out a bit more so it's easier to read. Print used questions A, which is equal to 0 at first. Next time it runs, it's going to be equal to 1, and that's going to print out question 2. Okay, yeah, so this looks good, I think. Well, let's find out. Would you like to attempt the quiz? I say yes. And then we see question 5 this time. Let's try that again. Okay. I say yes. We see question 1 this time. And then we can respond to it. We see a question 5 this time. Respond to it. See question 1, question 3, question 6, question 7, and let's see. That's a total of. Remember, it's still not unique. It still doesn't have that unique feature. But we're going to fix it afterwards. But what's important is that we are able to see each question. We see 1 question, 2 question, 3 question, 4 question, 5 question, 6 question, and that's the total amount of questions we have. So what's nice about all of this now, before we finish up the program, what's nice about all this is that now, if we wanted to, I can simply just add another question. So I can say maybe question, or I can change one of these questions and it will update live. Or maybe in the future, if I want to add more questions, all I have to do is just add these variables within the question bank. And it'll update. I don't have to change any other numbers because this does the math for us. So it takes the length of the question bank and then divides it. So we already know that. So yeah, let's get into getting or receiving the final grade, sorry. So we need correct answers as well. And we also want a score at the end, which we have to remember. So first of all, here up here, what I'm just going to do is I'm going to set score to something. So I'm going to say correct answers is automatically going to be set to 0 at the top of our work, right? Because before they do anything, they already have 0 correct answers. Correct. I'll call it an S equals 0, right? And we'll say each time they get one correct, they they get +1. Or correct answer gets +1, sorry. So anyways, we need to do that now. So let's see, response 1 equals input, and yeah, so 40 in range input. Sorry, I know I have some weird variable names, so it's kind of hard to understand, so I'll try to explain it. If intro, I'm trying to see what needs to be in the loop and what doesn't, just so we can clean up our work a bit more. So if the intro, maybe I'm going to rename this. I'll call this if the prompt. If they say yes to the prompt and that they want to do the quiz, it's going to print out A from questions, which should be 0, and that's going to be a random order already. After it prints A, it's going to add 1 to A so that the next time the loop runs, it's going to be a different number. And then if A is greater than the number, I guess we need this function at all, because A will never be greater than that number. And then response, so response equals input. So we might have to change this up a bit so we can have the correct for each one, because the question won't update and won't know which question is doing. So from used questions, use random set of questions from question bank. So that's what we need to remember. And I think stream again. But anyways, let's go like this. So do A plus 1. Let's do A plus 1 even. Let's leave A plus 1 after that. And response 1 equal, we need to compare the answers, of course. So if equals input or equals, we need to even create the correct answers. This is actually going to be a long program now that I think about it. I might not be able to fit it. I think I can fit in the whole camp. So yeah, it's going to be a little bit longer of a camp. I apologize, because I'm thinking about how this is going to be a little bit longer because I have to make some readjustments. I'm just thinking about what I have to do. But in the end, I think it'll be worth it. So let's break down exactly what I need to do in what's remaining so I can have a list of what I need to do. So first, it needs to be unique. Right now it's pulling any number. It might pull out the same thing on accident if it pulls it out. Next thing I need to do is I need to make it so that it asks each question, and when it asks each question, it gets any response for each one, I guess. Or sorry, we need to be able to answer and get the correct answer. So honestly, I want to work on the correct answers part first for now. Well, would you like to attempt a quiz? Let's remove the for loop for now, and let's just get the first question out of the way. So if they say yes, let's say print used questions A. So A, let's see, it prints out A, and what is A equal to? A is equal to, where's A? Let me see. Did I remove A? Okay, yeah, I removed it. Okay, A was equal to 0. So I'm going to change up the format just a tiny bit. So I'm going to go like this. Instead of having all of this, I don't want to call it rubbish. Let's just make it a little bit more simpler. So we have all our questions in the list, right? We have it in used questions now. And typically we just want to get each one from used questions and print it out. So I can still go A equals 0. And then from there now, I just need to add +1 each time to change the question. Or if I want to do even more different, I can just create it for each one. So I'm going to say print, or first we need the if, right? So if prom equals yes, new line, then we're going to say, what are we going to say? We're going to print a zero like that, okay? So A0 gets printed, and then what needs to happen after that? Let's just test it out. So would you like to attempt the quiz? I say yes. A is not defined. Did I find A up here? What am I? Sorry, I'm not doing it correctly. I didn't even define A. So what's it called? It needs to pull from used questions. My bad. Used questions. There we go. Let's run it. Would you like to attempt the quiz? I say yes. It prints question for sure. So then we need to even check what the question is, because we, the coder, don't know what the question is going to be pulled out, because that's also random. So then we're going to need to check each one. So I'll say if use questions zero, and I'll put a for loop on top of that, so it's going to be checking for each one. So for, you see question 4. Let's make it, actually, I guess we don't even need to do that. We can leave it to just prints out. So actually, let me see. How do I want to do this? How do I want to do this? This is complicated now. If used questions 0 equals. So if you're wondering what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to make it so that we can actually see what question is, because the question is randomized as it is right now. So even we, the programmer, don't know what's going to be printed out on screen. And if we don't know what's printed out, we can't display the right answer. So we need to attach each question to the right answer. And the way I'm seeing doing that is going to make this even more complicated. So let me think right now. Okay, so the way I'm thinking of doing that is by turning this into a list. And in the list, there are two things. There's the question and there's the answer. So what's going to happen is that I'm going to make it so that it prints out the question. And after, I'll just tell it to print out the same answer of that same list. But that's going to make it a little bit more complicated. I'm not sure if we're going to have enough time in today's camp. But if we don't, maybe we'll have a bonus day and we'll just wrap this up for 5 minutes at the next camp day. But yeah, let's try this quickly though, because I think I'm going to go over some of this since I've made some changes. But anyways, it's going to look like this. So it's going to be question 1, and then it's going to be answer beside it. So whatever the answer is. So I'll say A1 in this case. Okay, yeah, I think we should have been doing like this from the start. Okay, anyways. But I guess we learned. And the reason I'm doing this is because I already explained, but yeah, it's just, if it's random, we don't know what the question is going to be, right? So we need to make it so that the question is actually randomized as, or sorry, if the question is randomized, we don't know what to display as the answer. So we need to basically attach the question to the answer so you can skip that step. So that's what I'm doing right now. So now Q1, Q2, they hold a question and they hold an answer as well. But we don't have to change too much of our code, I don't think, because we're using variables a lot. So this is 2. This is 7. That's 8, sorry. 8, 9, 9. Okay, so let's see if that messed up anything else by doing this now. So that still works and still being a variable. We can still have correct answers equals 0. And then we can have a pull still. Yeah, it's going to get the questions. And now all these variables are inside used questions. That works. Then we're saying for rangeable, yeah, okay, this was just adding it. Would you like to attempt the quiz? Yes. And then now we're doing this. So we're going to say print used questions 0, and we're going to say if used questions 0, and then I need to go inside that now. So I'll say, can I go like this? Use question 0, because now I'm doing a list inside a list, right? So I think, let's see how I do that. If used question 0, and then another one beside it, I'll say 1, because 1 will be equal to answer. But let's just try printing it out. So let's test this. So I'm going to say print out used questions 0. So used questions 0, first of all, that's its own list. So that's the first thing it has. And then that's printing out question 1, right? So I'll get it to print out the answer. I'm going to go like this. So because it's printing a list inside a list. So 0 is 0. That means it should print out Q. It should print out Q and then whatever number. So let's save and let's run. I say yes. Q4. Okay, that works. Now let's see if it changes when I change this to 1. Because now it should be printing out A1, right? Or A something, sorry. So save that, run. I say yes, let's hope this works. Okay, so I think this works all right. So if you're wondering what these T brackets here, once again, it's getting a lot with lists now because we have a list inside a list. So we have Q1, or we have Q1. These are the variables first of all, and these variables hold a list. And then now these variables are going into the used questions list. So all this is empty here. Remember, we're adding them into the function. So this does get updated eventually. So yeah, that's pretty much that solved now. So what we need to do is that now we need to say, let me think. What we need to do now is, that was just testing this. So if they say yes, we're going to print out used question 0. Like that. Sorry, like that. And 0 is going to be something random from here, right? Actually, should we leave this as random again? Yeah, let's put this back to random. So I'll just copy and paste this. So rand it, let's in question mark. No, we have to change that up a bit. Let's see, I'll just write from scratch. So we're saying random.rand int, and then we're pulling 0 and then length of used questions, like that. And then we also need to say -1 for those new questions, like that. So if they say yes, we're printing out used questions like that. Let's make sure that works. Let's just do step by step now. So I'll say yes. It prints out Q3, A3, nice. And if I want it to just print out one thing, then after that, I'll say that. And I think since it's going to do, if I copy and paste this again, it's going to randomize. I'm just going to put in a variable so that one random thing stays the same value. Hello, somebody typed in chat. And let's go like this. So yeah, this is a bit more complicated of a program, but once again, I think it's going to be worth it if we reach the end. So A equals that. And now instead of saying this now, we're saying A. So yeah, we can move this. A. So it's going to print used questions A, which is a random number from used questions. And that is done. So how do I, oh yeah, I need to close it like that. So it's print used questions A, and we get response 1 again. Now we can do the step, response 1 equals input. And they can respond however. And then now we need to check to see if their input's the same. So I'm saying if response 1 equals, if response 1 equals, let's say A, let's say there's use questions A, and we're going A again, right? Because this is going 1. And then, okay, yeah. So I think we're going like this. Equals used questions A. And then I think we're going to say 1 because 1 represents the answer for it, right? We're going to print correct. And then we're also going to add 1 to correct answers, right? So it's going to be correct underscore ands plus equals 1. So this got a lot more complicated than I actually thought we would have to make it. But now I'm thinking more and more about it. There are a lot of features to the program. Bob made a lot of requests on what he wants to do. Yeah, Bob made a lot of requests on what he wants to do. So this is going to be a little bit more complicated. We could have done this another way again, but I guess this is honestly a good exercise, even for me as well. So let's make sure everything we wrote down makes sense. I have a pretty good feeling we're going to have to wrap this up closer to the end of, or we're going to have to wrap this up. We're going to have to do a bonus camp day to wrap this up. So it's going to be like, I guess, part 1 of 2, and part 2 is going to be a lot shorter. But yeah, let's wrap up what kind of we did, and then I'll add one more thing at the end. We'll test to see if this works all right. So we, of course, import random because there's a lot of random components. And now I've created my variables for the question. So let's just act as if I was writing this again. So create my variables for a question, Q1, Q2, Q3, because I have 9 questions. I've just created 9 variables. And each of these variables holds a question, and it also holds an answer. So the A represents an answer, and the Q represents a question. And we put this all in a list together. So the reason I had to do this is because, as we saw earlier, when I did not do this, since it's random once again, it's impossible for me, the programmer, to know what random thing's going to come out, right? Unless if I do a check for that, and then I get that, and then I have to go somehow attach it to the right answer and question. It's just a lot of writing. So this way now, I've just attached the question to the question and the answer, so we don't have to deal with any of that. So we've done that for each of these. And then once again, since we have to have a larger pool of questions as Bob requested, we put this all in question bank. So question bank holds all the possible questions. So it holds 9 questions total. And then we have correct answers, which we'll go back to. And then we have pull. So for pull now, what needs to happen is that we only want to take out 6 questions from this large question bank because that's equal to 2/3. But instead of just writing 6, we're doing an equation here so it can be dynamic and we can update it later. So we're saying length of question bank divided by 3 times 2. And that'll essentially always give us the 2/3 of it. And I guess I can write a comment up here. And the comment should say that it's make sure number of questions in question bank is divisible by 3. And because if it's not divisible by 3, this equation will result in a in a decimal, and you can't give half of a question, right? So what happens here is that I also create used questions. Let's organize the code a bit more. Used questions can go up by question bank as well. And then we say first of all, we just say it's going to grab 6 first of all. So this loop's running 6 times, and then it's going to basically saying it's adding 1 to used questions 6 times. It's going to be a random one from used questions for each track. Then we have a prompt saying, would you like to attempt the quiz now? In here, we set a variable A to a random value. And the reason we're setting this random value to A is so that this random value doesn't change afterwards, because this is the one we actually want to keep the same for a little bit, okay? So if this random value ends up being 3, when we call on A later, it will stay as 3. So then we're saying if the user said yes to wanting to attempt the quiz, it's going to print out used questions, which, remember, is that a large bank of questions that was getting added from this code over here when we were appending each one from question bank. It's going to go to used questions, and then inside used questions now it's going to grab a random thing. It's going to grab a random number, so that could be question 5 over here. And then since it grabbed question 5 now, inside question 5, it's going to go and grab value 1. And value 1 in all of these is equal to the answer. Sorry, that was my alarm. So value 1 is equal to the answer. So question 5, then it's going to go and grab 2 from that list, or sorry, 1 from that list, which is equal to A, which is 5. So hopefully that makes sense so far. So we're saying if response 1, if the user's response to when we printed out the question, we're going to see if the response is the same as as the used questions. We're going to print correct. We're also going to add 1 to correct answers. That's going to have to do later with our score. So let's test out this code, see if everything works. If it works, that's a good sign. And yeah, I think we'll be all right to wrap up there for today's camp. So I said this was the last camp. I think we're going to have one more bonus camp day to wrap up this program, but let's just test this out first. So let's save this, run it. Would you like to attempt the quiz? Yes. So I think that's just a simple problem I can fix right now. It's printing out Q2, A2, and then we get to respond, but I only want it to print out the question, right? So yeah, I want to kill it. And that's right up here. Okay, yeah, so this is a simple fix. Luckily, this isn't really a problem. So I just go like this and I say 0, right? Because for the first time, it's not, if it prints out just used questions A, it's going to print out, well, it's just going to print out the list, right? It's going to print out Q1, which is equal to a list. But we only want it to print out a value inside that list. And that's exactly why I have 2 brackets here. So now it's going to that list, and then it's also going to print out 0. And 0 is in all of these the question. Save that now and run it. We say yes. And we get Q3. So that works perfectly. So that's our question. So the part that we really want to work now is that if I write in A3 here, since we know that should be the answer, right? Q3 up here, the answer is A3. If I write in A3, I should, let me see if I have it to print out anything. Yeah, it should print correct on our screen. If you can do that, I think we did pretty much majority of the program today. So I'm going to say A3, and it prints out correct. So that's very good. I guess we started fixing the problem up at the end, and that kind of solves majority of our problems. So I don't want to go too over time with you guys, and I really want to thank you guys for sticking along with me this entire camp. But yeah, so pretty much what we have to do next camp, we just have to pretty much get the score and print it out to them after they complete it, and we have to rework on that unique part of the question bank, so it only grabs unique things. But with that being said, we're going to call that the end of today's camp. Once again, I know I said it was the last camp, but I want to go one more extra day for probably like 10 minutes just to finish up this program. And yeah, so this program, it's pretty good. We did pretty good job with it. It's dynamic, as you can probably tell. We have a lot of variables, and a lot of things don't need to be changed. But yeah, it's complicated too. So if you're able to follow along, that's great. If you had troubles following along, because I know it did get a little bit complicated, you can put your questions in chat and I'll answer them. I'll do my best to answer them. But yeah, I'll wait a little bit for see if there are any questions. But with that being said, that's pretty much the end of today's camp. So thank you for joining me, everybody. So again, I'll just be here for probably like a couple minutes, just waiting to see if there are any questions. A question you might have is probably regarding why I have 2 square brackets here, opening and closing twice. And once again, that's just because it's a list inside a list. So I'm calling another number from the list inside it. But yeah, if there are no questions, that's the end of today's camp. So let's be back one last time for next Saturday to finish up this program. I also recommend you guys try working on it. If you haven't already, let me give you the link for it again. Copy the link like that. And if you don't have the link, there it is. That's pretty much the problem we're solving. And yeah, so you can solve this any way you like. And yeah, I hope to see you guys next camp. So there looks like there are no questions. And I hope to hear from you guys soon. Goodbye. Thank you for joining me.